thanks for listening. This is Brian Hurley from Business Performance Improvement. The podcast Lean Six Sigma Bursts are short lessons, comments, Q&A, and insights. If you have a question, send your question through the Anchor app, and we might feature you on a future episode. Or contact me at biz-pi.com.
This is the sixth segment of the Clay Jones speech from 2006. This is the Q&A section. He gets asked 3 questions. First one is around mentoring and coaching and training. The second one was how Rockwell Collins was going after their healthcare costs and working with the local healthcare organizations. And the third one is around barriers and what things he was concerned about and working on. After he talks, I'll come back and give my perspectives.
Corey Hallam from Aurora Flight Sciences. My question has to deal with employee turnover. You talked about employee satisfaction going up as you improve the company. How do you deal with indoctrinating sort of the newbies coming in versus those who've experienced this evolution and the change?
We feel without question the absolute best way to indoctrinate or to teach new people who've come into the company is through mentoring and coaching. Tribal knowledge is a wonderful thing. Now, to supplement that, we have any variety of learning and development programs in our L&D organization, which you can go to, formal classes. Most of them are online, so you can do them at your leisure to understand the principles and concept of lean. We obviously also have to teach them some of these discrete processes like IPM and technical assistant processes if they're an engineer especially, that they're expected to follow. But again, most of that comes through direct work with and mentorship of the work group of which you're a part. Because that's where most people learn things. I mean, you read the book, but then you go find out what's really going on, right? And so you're going to pick that up in the halls. You're going to pick that up in many of the things you're part of. The other thing that has been very valuable, I mentioned knowledge management. In fact, Annette Fries is here, I see, and she's the guru that began to form the knowledge management strategy at Rockwell Collins. We've got her off doing some other stuff now, but we created what we call communities of practice, where people of common interest could get together, and I don't know how many we have now, Lynette, it's well into the hundreds. And these are all self-forming group. All we do is buy them pizza, because most of them are having during lunch. And these groups self-form to try to learn about what they do from other people around the corporation, beyond their work group. And that's been enormously influential at spreading best practices within disciplines. We started in engineering, and now we've got finance groups and marketing and salespeople forming communities of practice because they see the value of that too. So that's another way that we proliferate that learning.
Things that I've seen in some of the Air Force stuff is the cost of an airman. About 40% of it's in healthcare. And I know you guys have done some things in trying to apply lean in healthcare. I thought it might be interesting to review a little of that.
We have, George, and as an aside before I answer George's question, George Koenigsaecker, for those of you who don't know him, will be speaking to you tomorrow, I think. And part of that leadership transformation, I would give a great deal of credit directly to George. When we were sitting there with a room full of doubters at the senior level and trying to get past this act of faith, George was down at Hahn Corporation in Muscatine, just down the road, and we invited him to come up because we'd heard he'd done a lot of this stuff. And he made one of the most persuasive presentations to our leadership group on 2 subjects. One is that this stuff really works, and he had lots of facts and figures of how he's applied it at Hahn and how it made it successful. And the second thing, he didn't pull any punches of how hard it was. And so we knew what we were getting ourselves in for. So great credit to George. But relative to healthcare specifically, what we have done in addition to all the things corporations are doing to try to rework their plans and redistribute risk and all, the things that you've probably all been a part of, we've actually gone in our larger communities, mostly in Iowa, to the healthcare providers that are generating the cost that we're having to absorb through their rates and helping them become lean. We've done it in 2 hospitals, the 2 hospitals in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We've gone down to the University of Iowa Hospital. It's now being moved across the state in the whole hospital system. And talk about a bunch of wild-eyed advocates, where we've applied it, again, in the early stages of doing the Kaizen-type events. They've seen dramatic improvements of wait times. Anybody waited in a doctor's office? Or in efficiency to use certain of the tools they have to avoid capital expense. That's all going to come back to us. And with the leadership of those hospitals and the help of good people like Tom Bednar here and others, we've got them on that lean journey too, hopefully, again, self-enlightened interests to help us lower our already reasonable healthcare costs that are in the state of Iowa. And that's distinct competitive advantage when you look at the cost percentage of healthcare and the rate of growth we see in that. I mean, we'd kill for 2% lower semiconductor costs, and here we probably have the time to get much more percentage than that and a cost that's much greater than semiconductors.
Let me pause for a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Creative Safety Supply. Creative Safety Supply is a great resource for free guides, infographics, and continuous improvement tools. I recommend starting with their 5S guide. It includes breakdowns of the 5 pillars, ways to begin implementing 5S, and even organization tips and color charts. From red tags to floor markings, it's all there. Download it for free at creativesafetysupply.com/5S.
What do you see as the biggest barriers you're going to have to tackle in the next 5 years?
I get asked that question a lot, and I think it's one singular thing, and I'm on a huge soapbox throughout our corporation to do that, and that is complacency. We've done a lot of good stuff here. You saw the financial metrics I talked to you about, our ability to win. We've won a lot of market share, and I fear that our employees are going to start reading their press releases and think we're pretty good and that we can relax a little bit. Every year I go around to every one of our major locations that has more than 100 employees and make a personal how's the business going address. And the theme of it this year was the avoidance of complacency, the fact that the journey's not over, the race is still on, competitors are coming after us, customers are asking for more, and we just need to stay on this journey. I mean, you're really never through. While I was talking to George on the way in, one of the problems we have now that we are generating quite a bit of success in lean is what do we do next? What's the next thing we go after? And so things like the reduced design development cycle time was one of those that came out of that. Lifecycle value stream management came out of that thought of about every year or two we sit down with the senior leadership and we say, what's next? And if you've not read it, you should read a book called Learning to See. And what we find is now that we've eliminated waste, we see the next layer of waste. And we have to continuously get out of that. But although I'm concerned and I preach about that a lot, I feel now that lean's a part of our fabric. People understand the need to do that. And so if the leadership is bought into that and they keep pushing people to do it, hopefully we won't become complacent and continue to be able to push this thing. Because I think we look at cost of nonconformance, and there's still a lot of cost of nonconformance that we can point to very directly. Scrap, rework, warranty cost, all those things exist. Until that goes to zero, we're not done. Well, I think my time is at hand. Again, thank you so much for inviting me and continue your good work.
So on the first question around mentoring and coaching, you talked about these formal classes, both online and in the classroom. We did primarily classroom training back then. There was some online options like computer-based training through our learning management system. That was for some of the basic classes, but once we got into more than just an hour-long class, it was more hands-on and classroom. So I conducted quite a few different green belt classes, and I did start to teach some of the lean classes by then. We also had some leadership classes. We had a lean champion course that I taught. There's some problem-solving courses we developed and rolled out. I did a root cause analysis course early on. So there was a lot of different things we were doing. And then we had a formalized greenbelt program that was put together right around this time. So it was still probably new, where we were getting into a formalized Six Sigma program. He also mentioned the community of practice and went into more depth about that. I was involved with 2 of those communities of practice, the Lean Electronics COP, and then the Green or Sustainability. I think we called it the Green Communities COP. So that one was where we were trying to drive some sustainability and get employees engaged in doing more recycling or education on commuting options or trying to green up the cafeteria, things like that. We had people from different sites involved. So that was a really good program, and I think that was a great way to expand knowledge and communicate with each other, which is a common problem for every organization. So if you want to talk about the Communities of Practice program, let me know and I can give you some more details. The second question was around healthcare costs. I was actually surprised to hear his answer on that. I didn't know there was so much work being done with local healthcare organizations. The question came from George Koenigsaecker, who was at Han and also I think at John Deere And I'd heard him talk in the past, or I don't remember the context, but I knew he had talked with Rockwell Collins at some time. And either he said that they weren't really interested in doing this or doing it the right way. Maybe that was earlier, and now they brought him back and they'd given some new perspective, and they've been more open to it. So I'd have to talk to him to find out exactly what his memories were of Rockwell Collins. But he did come and try and show them, like, this is where you have to go and take this and how serious you need to be. So it was good to see Clay give him some props there, because I think I had heard that there was some resistance in the beginning. But as far as healthcare, I actually got involved in a grant program. I had met a local physician. He was a cardiothoracic surgeon, and he had started to come to some classes wanting to learn more about ISO and quality methods. So we said, well, you can just come to one of our classes and learn a little bit more. We built up a long friendship that we've had to this day. He put together a grant program to bring Lean and Six Sigma methods into anticoagulation clinic. We did a whole project to try and improve the process. And so it was my first real experience into healthcare and using Lean and Six Sigma. And I've used that example and that experience over and over again, including developing of a software program that tracks and builds up data and charts for patients to trend their test results. We did a gauge R&R study and found that some labs end up measuring higher or lower on their blood results, which can affect the patient's dosing on their medication, which is a very dangerous and risky medication. So that identified some great improvements. So that was really interesting to see that they've been doing a lot more than I realized to try to bring down healthcare costs using Lean. And the third question was around barriers. And he talked about complacency, and that was something I definitely remember him saying over and over again when he'd come to the site visits. Because I worked at the Iowa location where we'd have a big auditorium and lots of people would come, and he'd give talks all day long, basically. And then I was at some of the offsites where he'd come and visit. And same thing for those many years. Got to keep going, got to be diligent, got to keep driving improvements, can't stop, can't let our foot off the pedal. Continuous improvement, all those things. So I definitely heard that message. He mentioned the book Learning to See, so that's a great resource. And I think that helped, people realize that it's never ending and there's always more waste. And I agree, the more you dig in and find, the more you see. And I think it was starting to get into the culture at this point. I do think he was successful in getting it implemented. And then he mentioned the cost of nonconformance, and that was one of the ways that we try to capture the cost of quality and waste in our processes. And he said, until that's zero, then you still have opportunity. And so, obviously you're never going to get to zero. It was really important that that cost nonconformance was a part of this program, and that was developed through the quality program. And I was involved early on that. And I helped teams look at that metric and help them pick projects. That helped management see that there's always this opportunity of millions of dollars of potential waste that we can go after. Where you talked about the fabric of the company, embedding Lean into it, that's going to be easy to do when you're the CEO and you're driving it. However, when he retired, stepped down in 2013, there was a lot of questions about whether the new CEO would take over and continue to drive Lean. That person was Kelly Ortberg, who just recently was named CEO and President of Boeing. When he took over, the Lean program continued and he kept driving it. So that was a good sign. That's when I knew that, all right, this is something that's actually embedded in the culture. It wasn't just because the CEO was driving it. As soon as he leaves, it falls apart. It kept going and it's still going today. So, but on a side note there, I think Kelly Ortberg has his hands full with this Boeing job. I'm not sure why he came out of retirement to take on this role, but hopefully he brings some of the things he learned from Clay Jones and also his experience running Rockwell Collins and Collins Aerospace and can bring that to Boeing. I think they'll get it turned around. They're overall a good company. All my experiences with Boeing has been really positive. They're the ones that told us you really need to do Lean. That's what drove Clay Jones to start looking into it. I'm always thankful and grateful that Boeing drove our company to do that. Otherwise, I would never learned about it and wouldn't be here talking to you about these great methods. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll try to get back to some regular topics here, but I thought this was a really interesting speech. It really brought back a lot of memories for me, and I hope you learned something from it.
Lean6sigmadefinition.com has a list of glossary items about popular process improvement terms, along with the history of Lean and Six Sigma methods, and key influencers like Dr. Edward Stemming, Henry Ford, Taiichi Ono, Shigeo Shingo, and many more. You can also learn how to access affordable Lean and Six Sigma training and certification. Visit Lean6sigmadefinition.com.